I guess I just wanted to start with the big question that we're all asking is will it rain, and or will it rain enough to break the drought? That's probably the key question on everyone's lips at the moment. So the tool we're using today is the BOM forecast, the BOM climate outlook for the next for this season from December to February, and it was issued at the end of November. And I guess what we look at that, and we're seeing that much of our region is forecast to be drier than normal, drier than average. Not the sort of words we'd like to hear. And I guess you tag along with that. We're actually forecast that the outlook is forecasting to be hotter than average as well. Along with that, also there's while we haven't got an El Nino, there's sort of some signs that we're heading towards the development of an El Nino as well. So that's probably not what you all dialed in to hear today, because obviously we'd love to hear that there was a serious drought-breaking forecast that we could all look forward to. But what I want to look at is the picture up there on your screen is actually chance of exceeding median rainfall, and that's some of the terminology that BOM uses to indicate what the seasonal outlook is. And I just want to talk about that a little bit, because some of that terminology can be confusing. We've had some people ask us, to explain, what that actually means. So median rainfall is slightly different to average rainfall. Average, we all understand that from maths in school, but median is actually the rainfall we're most likely to receive. And because of where we live out here in Western Queensland, we've got a fairly variable rainfall pattern, and so there's quite a difference between our average rainfall and our median rainfall, because we do have those massive big years, and that blows our average out. But median's a more reliable estimate of what we're most likely to receive. And so for our region, over that period, over December to February, our median's 226 mils. So that's what we would be most likely to receive, 226 mils. So when BOM says that there's a less than 50% chance of exceeding our median, what it means is that we're likely to be drier than normal. So obviously, if we had a 50% chance of exceeding our median, that means we're probably likely to experience normal conditions. Higher than 50% would mean it's likely to be wetter than that. So if, as that forecast says, we're likely to be, our chances of exceeding median is less than 50%, what does that mean? How much does it actually mean? So just looking at this one, we've zoomed in a little bit to the Longreach, just to pick Longreach as a site. And this one tells us the chance of receiving certain levels of rainfall. So for Longreach, we've got a 50% chance of getting at least 200 mils over this period. So that's December to February. And if we back off a little bit to say 150 mils, we've got an 83% chance of getting that. Now, I know I can hear a lot of locals saying, well, actually, 200 mils would be a nice change compared to the last couple of years, or even 150 mils would probably be a nice change for most people. But it's still less than our median, and noticeably less than our median. And just even remember, even when we say we've got a 50% chance of getting at least 200 mils, that also means there's a 50% chance that we won't get that. We're actually talking probabilities, and yeah, I guess we probably like to focus maybe more on the one where we back off to 150 mil, where we've got an 83% chance of getting at least 150 mil over that period. So what does that mean? How accurate is that forecast? I guess that's the next thing we need to know. If we know, what we're expecting and what BOM is forecasting, how accurate is it? So this map here is basically it's called a skill map, but basically it means it is how accurate is the forecast. And sadly for Western Queensland, a lot of the time our forecasts aren't that accurate. You can see there, particularly into the northwest, out to Boulia, Mount Isa, those areas, there's fairly low skill for the forecast at this time of the year. And I guess for Longreach, even at Longreach, we're only talking, around that sort of 40 to 50%. Skill levels. So, people often say to us, well, why would you bother? why would you bother using a forecast if it's only, 50% accurate or 60% accurate at best? And I guess, the option is to completely ignore it and just go with our gut or go with chance. But if you were at a roulette table, or if I was, and someone said to you, look, where you're sitting there, mate, you've got a 50-50 chance of blowing your money or not. But what if someone came along and said, look, no, how about 83 times out of 100, I can make sure you win? I think I take those odds, and I guess that's what we're talking about, using probability. Not that we have a bulletproof, 100% accurate tool, but what we want to do is use the probabilities to help us shift the odds in our favour at least a little bit. So what I was going to do, I was just going to run through the monthly forecast and try and show you what I mean. So here we've got the forecast for December. Now, obviously, this was issued at the end of November, and now we're halfway through December, and we know that there's been some fairly useful rain in parts of our region, and Dave will talk a little bit about that there. But so the median for December, say for Longreach again, is 49 mils. So that's the rainfall that we would be most likely to expect. The chance of exceeding it based on BOMs forecast there is moderate. It's around that sort of, it's 43%. So it's close to average. So we would probably thinking that, yeah, we should expect our reasonably normal sort of conditions for December. But if we look at the accuracy for that forecast, it's actually very low at only 39%. And you might go, well, what's the story there? But if you think about what sort of weather we experience at Longreach in December, generally a lot of the weather we see is storm rain, and that's what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. There's been some really good falls in places, but it's been storms and it's been very patchy and inconsistent. So in terms of forecasting, always going to be hard to get that right at this time of the year, because a lot of those climate influences haven't really locked in. And so really, while we sort of say that forecast there is that we might experience normal conditions, the accuracy is quite low, and so we may not hinge a lot on that forecast. But having said that, it's probably been pretty close, where much of the region has received pretty handy rainfall, or at least partly. Just go on to the next month, and this is January. Now, median for January, so we're starting to move more into our wet season proper for Longreach anyway. Median there's about 60 mils, and as we move into this forecast, we've got a moderate chance of exceeding that, 43%. So again, we're probably thinking for Longreach, we might be experiencing reasonably normal sort of rainfall conditions. Let's have a look at the accuracy. Now, the accuracy is starting to pick up. It's still low at only 52%, but it's a big improvement on say the December accuracy. And you wonder why, like a lot of people ask us, why do we struggle with forecasting certainly in central Western Queensland? And Dr. Jackie Brown, from CSIRO, she goes out here and gave us a really good quote that I've flogged to death pretty much ever since. And in terms of climate drivers, we're on the edge of everything and we're in the middle of nothing. So that makes the job for the forecasters quite difficult, because we don't have a really clear climate driver that comes straight through the Central West and can give a really good guide to what's going to happen with the outlook. So realistically, we do struggle with accuracy in this area, but I guess what we're wanting to do is to take what tools we've got, which is that BOM forecast is probably the best tool we've got, and use that as to the best way we can in terms of management decisions. So I'll just come back now to that's the full period, so December to January. So you can see that the median for that whole period, 226 mils, the chance of exceeding it's quite low at 34%. So what it's telling us is that by February, our forecast is really starting to take a turn towards the drier side of things. And the accuracy is actually starting to get a lot better. Accuracy for this forecast is 61%. So again, now we're starting to sort of improve our odds a little bit in terms of what we're looking at here. We're starting to move away from that sort of 50-50 bet to something that's slightly more accurate. Now, why is that important? February is probably, well, it is our biggest rainfall month, and generally, as we move into that sort of the heart of our wet season, the forecast becomes more accurate, because some of those drivers start to lock in, and we really get a handle on what's going to happen. So it's our big year, our big rainfall month for the year. The accuracy is pretty good, and it's telling us that it's probably likely to be drier than normal. So what does that mean if you're a producer in Western Queensland? For this year coming up, if we haven't received useful rain by the end of January, and certainly that's a possibility for some people, we probably need to start looking at our plans and adjusting what plans, because often we get to the end of January and we go, hey, look, it's only January, we've still got February, March, we can still get useful rain. And I guess what this forecast is indicating is that we get to the end of January And maybe this is a year when we actually put our black hat on and we probably start to look at adjusting our plans, maybe shifting some of those decision dates forward, because the chances are, based on this forecast, if it holds through till next year, February won't be the normal year, the normal month that we expect. So there may not be that big rain in February to get us out of a hole if we haven't already received useful rain by the end of January. And look, just to probably give you some ideas what it looks like, I've been using Longreach as a point. But if we say put Boulia up, so Boulia's median for this period is 147 mils. They're again unlikely to exceed that. It's 38% for them, but the accuracy is quite low. Those guys out on that western side, accuracy is only 39% for them for this period. Hughenden, median there is 274 mils. Again, they're unlikely to exceed it, so it's pretty consistent across that whole area. Unlikely to exceed it, 34% chance of exceeding. And the accuracy is up to about 48%, so still low there. Tambo, go down to towards Tambo, 273 mil is the median there, so a little bit higher rainfall. Again, unlikely to exceed that, 36% chance of exceeding that median. And the accuracy is actually not too bad there, it's 57%. So again, if you're at Tambo and you haven't had useful rain by the end of January, it's probably time to start looking at maybe bringing some of those decision dates forward and maybe changing some of those plans towards the more risky side. Just want to talk briefly about temperature. Like I know everyone's focused on rainfall, but I really think temperature, we really need to increase our awareness of what temperature does, particularly to production. And you know, maybe there's another whole webinar one day to talk about the impact of extreme temperature on dry matter intake. But certainly in terms of production, temperature has a pretty big impact across our area. And like the bad news, I guess, is that temperature is likely to exceed median right across the board. I haven't split it up into months because they're all the same. It's going to be hotter than average right across the board. There's a 96% chance of that, so we've got pretty good accuracy with these temperature forecasts. Sorry, 57% accuracy, and the chance of exceeding that median is 96%. So it's highly likely that it'll be hotter than normal, and the accuracy is not too bad. So these conditions we're seeing, you know, drier than normal, hotter than normal, they're the sort of conditions you might experience under El Nino, under an El Nino scenario. But we actually don't have El Nino declared at the moment, and I just wanted to run through why that is and just talk a little bit about that as well. So I'll just take you to this slide. So this has got a lot of information on it, but basically we're still at El Nino alert. So what that means is it's not declared as El Nino, but the chances of El Nino forming are about 70% more than normal. So it's triple the normal likelihood of El Nino forming. So if it does develop, I mean, it's probably quite late. Normally El Nino would have kicked in by now if we're going to have one, but a lot of the models are sort of pointing to that, and they're pointing to that primarily because of sea surface temperatures in the tropical Pacific. They're actually already above El Nino threshold, so the sea surface temperature is already saying, yep, we're at El Nino levels already, and nearly all the models indicate that they're likely to stay there, that sea surface temperatures will stay at El Nino levels. But what's happening is some of the other drivers that normally need to be in place for us to have a full-blown El Nino, they haven't locked in, they haven't got to those levels, and particularly trade winds. Trade winds have been a bit all over the place, and as we know, look, with El Nino, we need those trade winds. Well, actually, we don't need El Nino at all. What we want is those trade winds to be blowing towards Australia, so they're bringing lots of warm water over here, and we head back towards La Nina. But where we are now, those trade winds have been all over the place, and for El Nino to lock in on top of those sea surface temperatures, we really need those trade winds to be weakening or to be turning back and blowing towards the east. But that hasn't happened. They've been all over the place. They've weakened a little bit and strengthened a bit, and yeah, there's no sort of clear signal coming from the trade winds. And similarly, cloudiness over near the date line. So normally once we see cloud, lots of cloud masses happening around the date line, that's another indicator that El Nino's starting to lock in. SOI is the same. SOI has been all over the place. It's been pretty much in a neutral range since September, and just lately it's actually been heading up. So normally with SOI, we normally need conditions below -7 to lock in an El Nino. We haven't seen that. So while we've got those sea surface temperatures pushing us towards El Nino, a lot of those other factors haven't coupled up yet. And normally that's what we need to see, is when they all start to run the same way, and then it sort of reinforces the whole El Nino process, and then away we go, and that'll lock in for some time then. So we haven't seen that yet, even though most of the models are indicating that probably will develop. And so I guess, if we can take any positive from that, is that we haven't actually locked into that El Nino situation yet. MJO is, some people call it the 40-day wave. It's actually in a pretty good place for us right now. It's just coming into that phase 4 and 5, and it is active. So normally active MJO through phases 4 and 5 would indicate wetter than normal. So that's probably nice to see, and whether that'll bring something through. So often that MJO can have an influence on climate patterns moving through, and it can be a trigger for rainfall events that may not have been seen otherwise. IOD, the Indian Ocean Dipole, it's pretty much winding down as it normally does around now anyway, and it's doing what it should. So look, to wrap that part of it up, while we haven't got El Nino at the moment, and that's probably a good thing, a lot of the models are indicating that we will move towards it, and as I said, some of those drivers are there already.